Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day you're watching this. I do hope it finds you well. My name is John, and I am an author, and I am here coming to you here on another, what I'm calling Talking Tuesday, to talk about some of the other things I'm interested on and have influence on. And today I am going to be talking about Star Wars. This is one where I have loved Star Wars as long as I can remember. Unlike my past few videos talking about sort of in general how I got into fantasy, Star Trek, and Doctor Who, I don't have a particular memory of the first time I was introduced to it. I was probably, I'm sure, a kid when, you know, five, six, seven. I'm not sure when, when my parents introduced me to the original Star Wars trilogy, which was all that's out. I also have very distinct memories. I haven't seen it in probably at least 20, probably more like 25 years. But I do actually have distinct memories of watching, I think it was a TV movie, Battle for Endor, or it's a movie with the Ewoks where a couple kids crash on the planet and they have to go on a quest with the Ewoks to battle a giant. I don't know, something or other. I have vivid memories of watching that as a kid. Again, I probably haven't seen that in 20 or 25 years. I think I saw the original Star Wars trilogy before that, though. I suppose one of the areas that kind of makes sense that I'm into science fiction, I'm into fantasy. Personally, I am of the school of thought that Star Wars is really much more fits in with the fantasy genre, sort of a space set fantasy. I mean, you have, mystic magic powers, sword fights, knights, dark lords, evil empires that really often, not that some of those aren't absent in part and not aren't part of science fiction, but really I think it fits more in with the fantasy genre. And really, I've always been distinctly, as I've gotten older and experienced more things, is really just what I appreciated what an improbable thing it was that George Lucas created. I mean, he took fantasy tropes and the typical, again, much more associated with fantasy, but present in other things of the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, Man of a Thousand Faces type of thing, and grafted that on with into like westerns and Japanese samurai movies and using technology that literally no one had ever seen before, to create a universe and create a story that just resonates and works so well, as improbable as it sounds. And then you have the even more remarkable in some degree, what's, I think cemented. I mean, Star Wars was huge, but I think cemented it is you have the Empire Strikes Back, in which the writer and director, I believe this was the one where the George Lucas had was still certainly involved, but the least involvement in the writer and director sort of kind of took all the things that worked so well about the original Star Wars: A New Hope and sort of threw it out the window or turned it on his head. You know the good guys are running, the bad guys win. It's a very dark, kind of bleak story in some ways. It's just so brilliantly shot and put together. Um, and then the conclusion in Return of the Jedi, as I feel always been strong. It's, maybe not as good as the first two movies, but I would personally argue that while there are some things in Return of the Jedi that don't work the best, what works well work is extraordinary. I mean, all the scenes with the Emperor, the duel between Luke and Vader, Vader's turn, Return. The space battle is amazing. It's still, I mean, so many. It's amazing how much the effects still hold up in all three of the original trilogy. Um, I never. This is one I never really. I have some friends who did, and thanks to the magic of the internet, I'm sort of familiar of some of what happens. I remember reading a few of the Young Jedi books when I was growing up. I believe there was a series following Anakin Solo, sort of when he first went to the Jedi Academy, Luke's Jedi Academy, that I read when I was a kid that I quite liked, but never really got into a lot of the other Star Wars literature. And then really came, you know, my love of that got cemented also through the games. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic is still one of my favorite games. It's just brilliantly put together. Um, as frustratingly glitchy and clearly missing pieces as it was, I like Knights of the Old Republic too quite a bit. And then, it was one of my formative movie going experiences. I was not quite 12. It's a few months short of being 12 when Phantom Menace came out in '99. And really, the same thing. I really enjoyed the prequels. I used to, like a lot of people, I used to pick them apart more than I do now, and sort of I've come around to just what works so well about them. I mean, again, the visual effects, the lightsaber fights, space battles, all hold up remarkably well. And there really is a lot of interest. Is there some stuff that's clunky, particularly the dialogue? Sure, absolutely. And like just some of the like theories or some of the stuff you appreciate getting older. And it's sort of one of those things, and I think this is sort of what a lot of people experience with the sequel trilogy, too, is that the hype for the prequels, particularly Phantom Menace, but the hype for the prequels was so high. I mean, it was the first Star Wars we were getting for like full like proper movie, not like a TV movie, for 16 years. Not to knock TV movies, just to jump back there, but just the full big budget, and nothing could live up to the amount of hype, particularly that Phantom Menace had. Um, Going into it. But I really love on balance the prequel trilogy. You know, I got into a few of the games. In the meantime, the MMO Star Wars: The Old Republic. I never really you know. I, I'll talk about gaming at some point. I've always had sort of mixed feelings about MMOs and sort of wide ranging games, but really well put together. And then moving into the sequels, you know, and I had a friend. In fact, you know, my best friends, not including my wife, my best friend is super into Star Wars. We you know met. We're roommates in college, and we talk a lot about. And he has read a lot of the books, and we talk about them all the time. Um, and then getting into the modern era, sort of more modern Disney era of Star Wars. Some people will disagree with me, and it's fine. I kind of don't blame, from my understanding of sort of the expanded universe of novels and stuff like that. That all took place after Return of the Jedi. I don't really terribly blame Disney for sort of jettisoning getting rid of all that as canon, simply because, from my understanding, following the plot and following what was coming out, and talking to my friend, Doug, and sort of his opinion on the books. And really, I got the sense of, I mean, George, there was a huge sandbox created for Star Wars, and for long stretches of time, very little oversight of it. So there was a lot of contradictions in characterization and sudden changes of direction as a new author, took over a series or decided to write as part of a series where it would turn direction suddenly. So, rather than having to go through and pick and choose, which, it sounded to me also, again, looking online, that there were some pretty staunch factions of, in favor of certain writers and certain ideas, and certain characterizations that were sort of in conflict, that it was probably safer rather than go through and pick and choose and risk really really pissing off and alienating some groups of the fan base to sort of annoy them all, to, for lack of a better word, but sort of start off with a fresh slate. Again, if you disagree with me, you loved a particular series or particular themes, that's entirely up to you. There did sound like there was a lot of good material there, so it is a shame they got rid of all of that. Similarly, I love the sequel trilogy. um you know Force Awakens was a great reintroduction. Yes, maybe it was a little too much of a rehash of A New Hope, but a good sequel trilogy. um Similarly, I know there's a lot of controversy on this one. I absolutely love The Last Jedi. Could they have done a few things a little differently or better? Yes, of course, you could say that about any movie, but I really like the guts to really turn the classic hero journey and hero story on its head, and try to bring Star Wars into something new. And then Rise of Skywalker. Similarly, I thought there were some really good bits to it, but probably a little too much. Playing with nostalgia and hedging their bets. Again, I don't quite blame them for that, but what could have been. But it has led to some great stuff. I absolutely love Rogue One. I think Rogue One was absolutely brilliantly put together, a brilliantly put together movie, that does a good job, I think, of, just to plug it a little bit, of really highlighting the importance of all the diversity and the importance of sort of the individual acts of heroism for the rebellion. I mean, it's not just Luke and Leia and Han. That it really was a huge organization requiring lots of heroism from lots of people to make it work. And I like how I love the ending, because I feel like, and I don't know if this was a deliberate choice by the filmmakers. I assume it was, but I love the ending, because with sort of Darth Vader storming the ship, because I think it does a good job of highlighting, the rebellion was huge and far beyond Luke and Leia and sort of the main characters from the original trilogy, but sort of underlining and highlighting the importance of Luke, because without Luke, the rebellion has no answer for Darth Vader and his power. So I really love that. Overall, I've been absolutely loving the new. I also really love Solo. That was perhaps some part of me feels to some degree like, was that a story that really needed to be told? But it's a great cast, and I think it is a pretty good movie overall, and I enjoyed it. And I love the TV shows. I mean, The Mandalorian's been great, and I love the way they've sort of slow played and slow introduced sort of legacy characters into that. Um, yeah, I absolutely love the Mandalorian. Oh, I'm trying to remember what other. I haven't seen a few of the animated ones. I mean, I love the animated Star Wars Clone Wars is ingenious, telling the story of the Clone Wars. Same thing, Rebels, telling a lot of stories of sort of the rebellions and sort of another angle of the survival of the Jedi, diving into Force Low. I love that. That's great. I need to catch up on some of the other ones like Bad Batch and Visions and a few other of the animated ones. Um, Book of Boba Fett, I personally thought I really like it. I think there's a lot of great stuff to it. I think the problem with Book of Boba Fett is they couldn't make up their mind what kind of show they were going for. In my personal opinion, again, if you disagree with me, that's fine. But I think Book of Boba Fett, they couldn't quite make up their mind what direction they were going or what they wanted to do. So sort of threw everything in there. So it ends up a little, to me, a little muddled. Um, Ahsoka, I thought was great. I've given it a little bit of time, and I feel like I need to go back and watch that again. Obi-Wan Kenobi, I feel like a little similarly to Solo, that there are some absolutely great parts to it. I loved seeing sort of one of the threads that sort of would contribute to the wider rebellion. It was great seeing Hayden Christensen back. There's some great fights. I mean, young Leia was amazing. I kind of feel a little similar to Solo in that it was sort of was this story really necessary? Not so much bringing Obi-Wan back, but having him, fight Vader again, and some of that. Um, it's great. It's great for what it is, but sort of was this really the direction they needed to go with that? Who knows? Um, One of the things I love is, one of the things that I have criticized personally, and me and other people, is that with the prequel trilogy is relying a little too heavily on CGI. I mean, CGI is amazing for space battles, but you know, CGI creatures fighting on a CGI landscape, and setting and background and all the green screen stuff really seems, it's a little dated and a little obvious, and kind of was at the time. Like, why did they need to CGI? Anyway, but I really love newer Star Wars is really sort of re-embracing puppetry and like makeup and masks and practical effects. Just it makes, just like the original Star Wars movies, I feel like actual like prosthetic masks and practical makeup and puppetry for larger or smaller, in the case of Baby Yoda slash Grogu, creatures really, I think, brings a lot more like life and tangibility to the world. And that's sort of using practical effects enhanced by CGI. Obviously, space battles go nuts with the CGI; they look great. But I feel like that's a really good balance, in part because I'm a huge fan of the art of puppetry and the work of the Jim Henson Company and others. I don't think has the Jim Henson Company has been as involved with the newer Star Wars movies. But I just love that work. In fact, talking about Jim Henson and Muppets and the art of puppetry might be my next Talking Tuesday video. Haven't 100% decided, but it's going to be one of these coming up here soon. So yeah, just like some of my other things, I would love to, in the future, some of these videos might break down some of the specific like movies and ideas, but that's my general overview and my thoughts and love of Star Wars. I mean, it's really been sort of a lot of those fantasy ideas have been very impactful on me, and I mean, there's just some great story moments and some great story beats that I can really appreciate as a writer, and just I love that, I love that universe. I'm gonna finish up with a couple things. First off, because they're rarely in the room with me, I'm gonna give you a little hello to my adorable dogs. They rarely come visit me or hang out while I'm shooting these, but it's our dog Melody, and that's Rory. Uh, they are Dane Pit and a couple different type of hound dog mixes. They're brother and sister, 6 years old. Adorable, but still can be little terrors on occasion. Um, and then the last thing I'm going to finish up with is my usual pitch to please buy my books or check them out on Amazon. We have The Shadow of the Past and The Sunburn Red. They are both available. Linked down below, as are my website and other various socials. I hope you all have. Thank you for tuning into my video. I hope you all have a wonderful day and have an opportunity to do or experience something creative. Um, and I'll catch you on the next one.